everybody. It's March 10th, and this is Genealogy Chat. We're coming to you live from the Will and R Genealogy Center, the service of Eckhart Public Library. The center is open Monday and Tuesday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to noon. My first guest is Nancy Derrow. And Nancy, tell us something about yourself of which you're most proud.
Well, I was born. And then I've lived in Auburn most of my life. I was gone like 12 or 13 years from high school on, but did come back, and very happy, glad I did come back. I've raised 4 children here, and just been a good place to live. I was born the beginning of the Great Depression, so it was a hard time, but I actually feel it was the best time to grow up. I was fortunate my dad had a job all through the Depression, and my mother gave piano lessons at 75 cents a lesson, and so could stay at home and supplement my dad's income. I loved growing up in Auburn. It was a great place to grow up. There were so many things. Auburn was a little over 5,000 people then, and there was a wonderful YMCA. We were the smallest town in the United States to have a YMCA. And we had a wonderful library, the Eckhart Public Library. And we had a great park, the Eckhart Park. We had a wonderful movie theater, the movie theater downtown. We had a great church that I belonged to, the Presbyterian Church. And everything was great. And the thing about it was I could walk or ride my bicycle to all these facilities. Great school system. So I feel very happy and proud that I could grow up here. I was 10 years old on December the 7th, 1941. Oh. And my family always, of course, went to church on Sunday. We always would stop at the Auburn newspaper stand. It was actually it was on 9th Street where Little John Auction is now. It was a newsstand and a coffee shop, and we always stopped there after church because my dad was Canadian, and he wanted to pick up the Chicago Tribune because he felt there was a little more things about the world than local. So that was great. That was part of our thing. We'd go home, pull up, and my brother and I loved the Chicago Tribune because of the funnies. Do they call them funnies anymore? Oh, okay.
They do.
So the funnies, and Dick Tracy and Little Orphan Annie and all that. My mother would go to the kitchen to get dinner ready. My dad would follow her, but before he did, he'd turn the radio on. And then he would be hanging around there a little bit. My brother and I would be fighting over the funnies, and then I noticed my dad went into the kitchen and he shut the door, and I could hear my mom and dad talking later on, but I was only 10, so I didn't know what was going on. Later, I found out that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. The next day, of course, President Roosevelt gave his speech to Congress, and if you haven't Googled that or listened to it, it's something you should listen to it. It was great. He talked about the fact that December the 7th, 1941, that date would go down in infamy, and that's a favorite speech of his. From then on, Auburn changed along with all the other communities in the United States. My dad was appointed air raid warden in our district the whole town of Auburn had separate districts, and they appointed people to be air raid wardens. We practiced, and when the siren would go off, everyone turned their lights off. And my dad's job, in his helmet and his flashlight, was to walk around the area and see if anyone had lights on. And then, I don't know, I guess he would knock on their door and tell them. I was proud of my dad, but kind of scared for him too, because it was dark, and he was, at that time, I thought the air raid siren and all this was scary. But that was the beginning of everything that Auburn, and I'm sure I'll miss some things, did for the war effort. Everything was, we had trouble getting everything, and it was changed because rationing, everything was rationed. You had a book with coupons in it to get butter and milk and everything. President Roosevelt came on and made a mandate that you could only drive 35 miles an hour. Of course, with no interstates, that was not, to me, and we had a 36 Chevy, it wasn't a big deal. But it saved gas and rubber, because the slower you go, we should think about that now, it was easier on your tires. And Japan had all our rubber that we were getting, so we couldn't get any more rubber. So there was that mandate, but there were so many other things that you couldn't get, clothing, and you've heard of the black market. The black market really became active then, and I hate to say this, but my dad he knew a lot of black market people, I think, because we always could get meat and butter and whatever there was. We could always get it. Everyone had a victory garden, so you grew all those things that you couldn't get before. And I know we had a big victory garden, and my brother and I hated it because we had to weed, and it was, anyway, our victory garden. Clothing was hard to get. And for example, one day Mother and I were driving through town, probably to go to church, and Schaub's department store. Do you know where it is now? It has that sign that says Schaub's in stained glass. Well, that was the big department store in town, and women were lined up outside the door, clear around to 8th Street. Well, Schaub's had gotten a shipment of hose in, and you could not get hose because silk hose had been taken from by the government to make parachutes. Nylon had just been invented, or whatever you say, so there was some nylon, but even at the end, they were mixing the nylon with the silk, so even nylon hose were hard to get. And I remember one day walking down the hall in our upstairs bedroom, and my sister, who was quite a bit older, was standing in the bathtub putting you had leg makeup for your legs, for your hose. And the only issue about that was getting the line up the back, because all hose had a seam line. If you had a friend that could do it, fine. If you had to go without, well, you had to go without. That was all there was to that. A lot of drives for metal. If you had an old pan or anything, there were always drives for metal. And the Court Theater, the movie theater, had a thing. If you bring metal, you can go to the movies free. So the Genealogy department has a wonderful picture outside the Court Theater of a truck with an open back, backed up, and kids and adults were happy, and some of the kids were up with the metal to throw. So there is a nice picture of that if you can get that out. And you could go in the movie free. The movie was only 10 cents, but still, you could go free. And talk about that, every Friday in school, you had, there was a treasurer, one of the more responsible kids in this class, and you bought tickets, war stamps, and you had a little book, and they sold for 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents, or you could buy a war bond for $25. Most time, 10 cents is what kids could bring. And when you filled up your book, you got an $18.95 war bond that turned into $25 in 10 years or whatever. So that was another thing that they did. Let's see, scrap drives all over. Was talking to a friend of mine who was involved with Riki Corporation and the factories around town, and I'm sure Riki's weren't the only one, but they started hiring women to work in the factory because the men were gone. And you've seen posters of Rosie the Riveter with her arm pulled out, rolled, her sleeves rolled up. Norman Rockwell did that, by the way.
Yes.
You knew that, okay. So the men were gone, and so the women started working in the factories. And I don't think many women did that before, but then Riki's, I think, still hire women in the factories. But then they quit making their product because they had to make for the government. And so they made, maybe Zach would know, for the back of Jeeps, there was, I don't know, a gas tank or something, and they made the top, is that right? The top for that. And then factories who did this work, and they made so much I tried to look this up and I couldn't find an E flag. Does that ring a bell to anybody? And Riki's had an E flag that they flew over their building. So, and there wasn't a lot more people with the war going on. I noticed in yearbooks when I graduated and when some other friends did, there were older men in my senior class, and they were veterans who had quit school, joined the Army, came back, and graduated to get their high school diploma. So that was kind of interesting. While the war was going on, I had a pen pal in England, and I don't know how I got her name or how she got my gay name, but that was not unusual to have pen pals. Her name was Marie Byerly. She was my age. We wrote back and forth for quite a few years, and she was mesmerized with Hollywood and the stars, especially Greer Garson, who was English. And I remember once there was a photo, I forget the magazine, with Greer Garson's picture on the front in color because she had red hair. I sent that to Marie. Well, you would have thought that I'd sent her the world. She was so excited and so popular because she sold all her friends. One thing about writing to her is her letters, my kids hate, I still have stuff. But anyway, this is one of the letters that she sent to me. And then, and it just blows my mind, there were censors that would rip the letter open here at the end, pull your letter out, read it, and if you hadn't said anything that was, going to ruin the country, they were okay. They'd put it back in and then put this seal on the end of it so that you knew a censor had read your letter. And I had some at home, I couldn't find them, where they cut out words that she had said. And, we were 11 and 12 years old. I don't know what they thought was going to happen there.
This is fascinating. My parents were both born in the 1920s, and I've heard some of this.
Yes.
But,
Well, and then the other thing, towards the end of the war, the Germans were sending these V-2 rockets, do you know what, over, and they didn't care where they landed. And, of course, in case it was like an airplane without wings, but, full. And I got a letter from Marie and saying that she was being sent to the country because they were sending all the children out of the cities to the country. And her concern was not for her mom and dad, but for her cat and dog. And so and sadly, I lost touch with her, and I don't know what happened after May 1945 when they signed the peace treaty. I don't know what happened. At the end of the war, they were trying to do things for veterans. And if you go down Ensley Avenue towards Garrett, you see all these houses that look alike. They all look alike.
Yes.
They built those for the veterans when they came back. And I do know a couple that I don't know whether they bought it or rented it, I don't know. But they lived there for a brief period of time. So that's kind of my time with the war.
Well, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing some of your memories. I hope you'll come back and tell us more about your fascinating life.
Oh, it really?
Yes.
Wait till I tell my kids I have a fascinating life. I don't know. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for...
I hope I didn't leave too much out, and I just made it. It's 4 o'clock.
So that's why you need to come back.
Well, I just, it was a fascinating time, and like I said, Auburn was a great place because you had so much here that it just was amazing. And I didn't add this. Am I still on? Okay. Well, I'll tell you later.
Okay. Next time you're here.
No, I'll tell you later.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Okay, all right.
So Nancy was telling us something that's called oral history, where you retell something fun and fascinating from your life. And we have a program here, Oral History Services, in which you can sit down for 30 minutes or an hour with one of our people here, Andrew or Zach, and we'll make a recording of the little stories that you tell, and we'll give you copies of the stories that you can have forever. So thank you so very much, Nancy. So our next guests are here from Auburn Main Street, and they're going to talk to us about a new program. But what I understand about Auburn Main Street is that they're here to reverse the physical decline of the business district and to collaborate, promote, and preserve historic downtown.
That's absolutely correct.
So our next guests are Ann Finchum,
Yes.
who's the executive director of Auburn Main Street,
Yes.
and Amber Haiflich,
Yes.
who is the community coordinator.
Yes.
So ladies, can you tell me why you were interested in working for Auburn Main Street?
Well, I got involved in 2013. I was asked to join the board, and I was working in banking at the time, and I fell in love with it. I had stayed involved, became the president, and just became something I absolutely loved getting involved with, making change in our community, being able to impact our quality of place, and making improvements to our downtown. It may seem subtle at first. It takes a long time to make change. It was a real eye-opener to see that from concept and discussions around a round table to the time that change actually gets to be seen by everyone else. It may seem like, oh my goodness, this happened overnight, and it took 3 years. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a discussion long before it actually takes place. Murals take 2 to 3 years sometimes to get taken. It's amazing. Sometimes they can go up really quickly if you already have funding and ideas in place ahead of time, if those have already been thought through. But sometimes it takes a while to get the funding to back those ideas. So that's where sometimes the time frame can drag out. But the passion's there because the love's there, especially even if you haven't been from Auburn, it doesn't take long to fall in love with it. So anyway, I ended up leaving banking. I stayed involved with Auburn Main Street, and I decided to become the executive director. So that's what landed me here. So.
And Amber, what drew you What drew you to it?
Yeah, I've grown up in Auburn, been here since I was 5 years old. I'm now raising my family here. Worked for one of the oldest companies in Auburn before I took over the community coordinator position. I was a marketing coordinator with Messenger LLC. So
Oh.
having the opportunity to kind of step into this role to help Anne, help the whole board members just really develop the downtown and work on these amazing projects, it was something I could not pass up. So being able to leave that little bit behind for my kids to enjoy and their kids to enjoy, it's just breathtaking, it's amazing, it's an opportunity you can't miss.
That's true. And your article, which appeared last month in the Auburn Star, was
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. It was a little bit of a shock. Haven't been in the paper like that. So my kids were excited. They wanted to show all their friends at school and their teachers, especially my 7-year-old. He was super excited to go back to second grade and tell his teacher. And it was a good moment though. Definitely.
So your first visit to the show,
Yes.
first of many, we're going to talk about the Hoosier Enduring Legacy Program,
Yes.
acronym HELP.
Correct.
Yes.
So tell us all about it.
I'll start off talking about it. So, coming out of the pandemic, the American Recovery Act came about, and funding became available to the state, federally and to the state. And then we know that money was going to be funded through both locally to our cities and to our counties. The state has funding, basically all of their funding for larger projects was put on hold, as just didn't make sense while a pandemic was going on to fund other grant projects. So they put all of that on hold. So they typically do a large project called Stellar. And it is a big project for a community that's awarded it. And it is about, a $12 to $18 million project. Well, they put that on hold and they said, let's do something else with this money that would make sense to partner with ARPA dollars to maximize impact to communities. So they put together this grant package and called it Hoosier Enduring Legacy, coming out of the pandemic, to allow 12 communities to be awarded a package of a matching $1 million grant, so a total of $2 million to be impactful for your community, if awarded the grant, to go through this process, and if selected, have this extra $1 million coming out of the pandemic to make something of a legacy in your community. And so when we went through this, when first talking to mayor and council, whether or not we were going to apply for this, of course, knowing that it would be another potential $1 million for our community, we had a unanimous vote to go after the project, and we were awarded it ultimately. And so in December, we found out we were awarded it. So right now, I know. What that meant is we knew we had to hire a new position. That meant we did get to hire for a new position for the coordination of it. It is a 2-year project. The first 12 months is a community engagement process. And the following 2 years, and then the following year is the actual engagement and hopefully facilitation of the project. I'm going to let Amber talk about how it all works out with the community.
Yes. So how it works out with the community is we do a lot of engagement, talking, gather members of the community to kind of take on these boards and these committees for our pathways. There's 4 different pathways that we work with some state colleges. We have Purdue that is helping with our advancement of e-connectivity. So just to kind of help with broadband, intelligent communities, any of that sorts. Then we also have Ball State, who's helping with our enhancement of quality of living in place. So beautification of downtown, parks, all that kind of stuff. We also partner with IU, who is doing our community wellness. Kind of goes hand in hand with Ball State's getting people up and active and out and moving around. And then our last community college that we work with is Ivy Tech. They're going to help strengthen our local economics. So how that's going to involve the community is we are asking anybody if they want to come in and join, sign up for a committee. We will kind of split off into 4 different groups and just really talk through how we can advance those different topics into our downtown Auburn.
So we definitely want to engage the community, and if you have expertise in those areas too, to get involved, so that we can help to guide the community in the decision making towards those. They're going to be looking at community plans that exist currently. So I know the mayor showcased his idea along the Creekway. Since we do have a riverfront district, it has not been fully utilized yet. It's been identified as a riverfront district, but we haven't been able to put investment into it yet fully, so it's not being fully utilized. That's an area that obviously in our plans it's been identified for future development, but it has not happened yet. The parks plan has just been revealed too for enhancement in some of our parks, so that's exciting. So they'll look at all of the different community plans that have just been released, such as 2040 that talks about gateway enhancements coming into our community, and there's other plans that have been looked at. So what this group will get to do is not only look at those 4 pathways, they'll get to look at what input from the 4 universities and come up with ideas that is actually going to leave a legacy. So what project can we put this $2 million into, and maybe go after other funding to make it even more than $2 million, and see what we can do for our community to leave something behind that's really great.
That's very important.
That's super important, you know.
So how do people get in touch with you, find out more about this, how they can volunteer?
Well, we're taking names on lists, really, and we need to know your email so that we can put you on a list to keep you informed, right? So So email Amber.
Yeah, my email is information@auburnmainstreet.org. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have questions, if you want to sign up, anything we can help with. If you have ideas, feel free to reach out.
And please repeat your email again.
Yes, it's information@auburnmainstreet.org.
So there'll be a couple other ways people can follow the progress or get involved. We will be doing community surveys through this process to get feedback from the community, just as to get their opinions on what they like, don't like in this process. We also will be doing in June 9th, actually the date's been selected. The location has not been identified yet, but June 9th will be the date. And we're going to be doing a community forum. And so that will be a time where community members will be asked to come and literally participate in this process as well. So that will be open to community members as well. So there's some other ways without necessarily participating generally in the pathways. There's other ways people can get involved.
And how do we learn more about the other ways? How do we get in touch
hopefully
with
we'll be
you?
putting that out in the newspaper, social media, and some other ways so keep your eyes open for that as well.
Yes, more to come soon.
You have a website or some way that
Yes.
folks can get in touch with you, see the wonderful things that you've done in the past and will be doing in the future?
Absolutely. We don't have anything out there right now about the Hoosier Enduring Legacy Program. We will be keeping it up to date as we move forward, but do keep an eye out on auburnmainstreet.org. We will be starting to keep a blog. Right now we're just gaining names, so we will start having a place where you can sign up for that going forward. So please keep an eye out for that, and as more information rolls out, right now we're just taking names and getting people, so hopefully we'll have more about it here shortly. So we'll try to get a page open towards it. So right now there's just that we've been announced as a participant in it. So we're just trying to get the word out that we're at the starting process. So.
And Amber, please repeat your email address.
Yes, it's information@auburnmainstreet.org.
Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
please repeat your web address.
Yes, it is www.auburnmainstreet.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Yes.
Please come back a lot.
Yes, we'd love to. There's a lot of new things that we have going on, so we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, ladies. Really appreciate. One more time, your email address.
Information@auburnmainstreet.org.
Thank you, Ann and Amber.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Have a fun night.
Yes.
Do something
You too.
exciting.
Yes, you too.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for
you,
having us.
ladies. So now we're going to move into the genealogy portion of the show. Thank you so much, ladies. Goodbye. So we're basically going to start with the beginning of genealogy. And to begin with, you want to be very well organized, and you want to have all your stuff organized. You want to have a 4-generation pedigree chart, which is just another term for family tree. And you start with yourself. You start with yourself, with your name, birth date, birthplace, and so forth. And then you move back to your father and your mother. And if you know it, you want to add your grandparents. So you want to get as much of your paperwork together as you can. And I recommend, if you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one, your family Bible. That's a great place to start your genealogy. And genealogy is you basically want to learn more about your family, your ancestors, their occupations, and so forth. So if you're lucky enough to have a family Bible, there's often a section with the Holy Matrimony section with the date and the year. And then there's also often a section with births and marriages and so forth. Now, my parents, they were somewhat good about keeping records. My mother saved my father's obituary that was in the paper, but she didn't write the date that he died. So it's very important. You want to save as much of this as possible. Obituaries, you want to save all of this, and you want to make sure you write the date of the event, of the obituary. And you can't always trust obituaries because in my father's, it mentions that his mother's maiden name was Cote, C-O-T-E, when it's actually C-O-L-E. So you want to pay particular attention to all of your documentation, including things like death certificates. Those are often wrong as well. So you want to start on your pedigree chart with what you know, as I said, you with your name. Use this so it might be easier to see. You with your name, your birth date, and so forth. So this is my father's obituary. So I'm going to write down his name, the complete name, first name and middle name. His name was Joe Harlan Pritchett. And you write, and you've got his birth date, which is listed here in the obituary. And what's unusual about genealogy is that we all use the European standard for writing dates. So in that case, it's the day, and then the month, and then the year. But I'll show you that later on. So then you want to enter the rest of your father's information. And then my parents also kept a copy of my sister's birth announcement that was in the newspaper. And you can add that into one of your charts as well. And this is known as a family group sheet. We have all of these forms on our website, and you can download all of those. But in the family group sheet, you've got children on the first line, the child's name, the date of birth, and the place. So in this case, my sister's name was Melissa Jean Pritchett. She was born July 21st, 1949, but we want to use the European example. So it's 21, which is her birthday, 7, which is the month, and then the year. And place, she was born in Chicago, Cook County, Illinois. And the format you want to use for place is the city, the county, and then the state. And I have an example here that I've completed part of it, the 4-generation family chart or family tree. And I want to mention that it's extremely important to use a pencil only, when you are doing anything in genealogy. In case you make a mistake, as I do, you can easily erase the mistakes. But let's see. Here I've got, of course, my mother with her birth date, her birthplace, her death date. We want to use the European format with the day followed by the month and the year, and the death place. You want to put the city, the county, and the state, and then you just keep going back as much as you can. With my maternal grandfather, that's my grandmother on my father's side. I knew her name, her maiden name. You want to, for women, you want to list the maiden names, not the married names. And I didn't know her birth date, but I had approximation. So, and we'll go through this in much more detail later in future episodes. But I want to show you all how you can go to our website and view and download the forms. Again, the basic forms that you want to use are your family chart, which is also known as a pedigree chart, and then you also want your family group sheet, which lists brothers and sisters, when they were born, and so forth. So now we're going to take you to the Eckhart Public Library's website, which is really easy to find. You go to the home page of the Eckhart Public Library website, and then you click Resources. Library Services. This is a live show, so thank you so much to my helpful co-host, Andrew. So you click on the Library Services link, and you scroll down the page to Genealogy, and you click on that, and you're taken to the Willenard Genealogy Center homepage. And you scroll down, and it shows you different things, newspapers and so forth. And you scroll down to genealogy forms, and I believe there are 4 forms. One is the 4-generation pedigree chart, which I showed you, and the family group sheet, which we've also looked at, and then 2 additional forms. So this is it for the March 10th episode of Genealogy Chat. I want to thank you all for watching, and thank my co-host assistants Andrew and Zach. And we'll be back next week. Next week will be our St. Patrick's Day show. So we're going to have a lot of fun, the history of St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to do some research on our ancestors who came from Ireland, Scotland, and so forth. So thank you all for watching the show, and we'll see you next week.